All right, it's currently 7:01 p.m. on September 19th, 2024. Call this meeting of the Municipality of Anchorage's Board of Ethics to order. Our first item, Ms. Slepy, if you please call roll.
Yes, Mr. Bellerive,
Present.
Mr. Teagarden,
Here.
Ms. Mogadam,
Present.
and Mr. Neighbors said he will not be able to attend, so Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next item on the agenda this evening is the approval of this evening's agenda. The board will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
And is there any discussion? And the question is for the approval of this meeting's agenda. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And none opposed. The motion carries. And the next item on our agenda this evening is the approval of the meetings of the previous the minutes of the previous meeting. And the board will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the meetings from, or the minutes from the previous meeting.
I'll second it.
And is there any discussion? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all those opposed? And the minutes of the previous meeting are approved. The next item on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda. At 5A1, we have items A, B, C, and D for consideration, and the board will entertain a motion.
I've reviewed them and I did not see any issues, so I would move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second them.
All right, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the items on this evening's consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And up next, we have unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business before the board this evening?
Not that I'm aware of.
In that case, we can move forward with item number 7, new business. We have a request for an advisory opinion, 2024 TAC 02.
So before discussing this, I thought I saw the requester on.
We have, and I did have one question here before we
But I
address
think-
it.
yeah, I
for
think
the
we need-
substance here.
Yeah, I think we need to go into confidential session.
Correct. And I hadn't seen, or I guess the printout I'm looking at doesn't have either the waiver or request for confidentiality checked.
Correct, and I would say without waiving confidentiality, I would err on the side of caution.
Carissa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but or maybe we could just ask the requester right now without stating her name until we get a definitive answer. But I thought the original form indicated that confidentiality was waived.
Yes, that's why I
And-
didn't have confidential on there. Let me just double check.
So maybe we could just ask the requester to confirm that right now, and then we could just go ahead and take it up in this meeting.
That's correct. I meant, or I did check the box to waive confidentiality.
Okay, perfect.
And with that, would we have a motion for the purpose of discussion?
Are you just asking for a motion to discuss it?
I guess if we're going very strictly Robert's rules, it would be a motion or what the opinion would be, and then with a second, we would just be in discussion on that until we've, well, had a complete discussion of the item, correct?
Yeah, I
I'm not
think
sure.
you could just you could, if there was a motion to take this advisory opinion up for consideration, you could just approve that, and then like I said, the requester is here to answer any questions that any board member has about the request. So that would probably be the first step.
Okay, so do we have a motion to take up item 7A for consideration?
So moved.
And a second?
Patrick,
I
I
can
think you're muted.
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion? And
Well,
following the line, go ahead, Kelly, sorry.
I had some questions. Do you want to start? Do you have any questions or clarification?
I don't have any questions or clarification to start with. Happy to, engage with this as we move through it.
Oh, I think we lost the requester that I was going to ask some questions.
And
There
we, perfect.
So with the type of work that you would be doing for the mayor's office on this special assignment, if there were any contracts done with the company that you currently are a shareholder of, would these be long-term contracts? Or kind of what do those contracts look like?
Well, I can just tell you, excuse me, in the past, the types of contracts we've had with the municipality would be like, for example, we're just finishing one right now where we provided support for developing the plan for dispersing alcohol tax funds. And that was about a 9-month project where we pulled a community steering committee together, reviewed other plans, helped pull the plan together, did a bunch of community meetings, and then helped the steering committee kind of draft the plan that eventually went to the assembly. And we also did some communications work related to that. We've had another one that hasn't been as active over the past couple of years with the Community Development Authority, where we had a term contract, and then the director of that office would initiate work orders, and then we would do work with them. That was mainly around property redevelopment and housing development. So those are just a couple examples. Like during the pandemic, we worked really closely with the health department and provided data analysis to their office, and that was probably for a year, maybe a year and a half. So does that answer your question?
It does. They seem like longer term contracts. My concern here would be, while you're working for the mayor's office, you know, entering into a long-term contract with the company after you've sold your shares, but then having that buyback allowance and then buying back into being a shareholder, and then those contracts that you helped secure when you were in the mayor's office can then profiting off of those. And I mean, that's a form of like you can contract around anything. So when you do a buyback, you know, there's potentially, you know, you can put a clause in that you wouldn't get paid out, your shares wouldn't get paid out for any sort of project that any sort of profit from a project that came in while you were working at the mayor's office. Those types of terms would probably relieve that concern. But that was the biggest thing that kind of stuck out like a sore thumb to me when I just read your quick little blurb.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I that can definitely be added to the. We've been working with our attorney to draft those documents. So I could definitely add that in. And I guess my question around that, back to you, is, so I guess two things. One, I don't actually know, or I don't know in what way I would have kind of influence over contracting from that position as a special assistant. And I don't know, that's probably nothing that anyone here can answer. But the other question I had specifically was, you know, I'm starting September 30th. Does the kind of shares transfer need to have happened right then, or is there, it's just easier if we do it at the end of the year, but you know, is there any kind of grace, like any thoughts on that, like the timing of it?
Oh, hi, Thea. This is Paul Oversee. I was wondering if I could just speak if the board's okay, just answering a few of that, kind of how I saw this issue. Maybe it would be helpful for the board if you first of all kind of explained what you anticipate your role to be, or what your municipal position would be and what your responsibilities would be. Because how I viewed that stock buyback provision is I didn't think that it would serve the intended purposes, or it's not really going to change anything. It's not going to change the analysis. So a recusal would be required in any event. So anytime there's a contract or a potential to award company to that or money, anytime there's a potential that the company's bottom line can be impacted through the awarding of contracts, you would be recused from taking any official actions and wouldn't participate in those actions. So whether there's a stock buyback or not, I don't think it would really matter. Like the stock buyback is not going to allow you to participate in official actions that you would not otherwise be able to participate in, because you still have the potential of gaining a financial interest in the future once that your municipal employment is over and you go back to owning those stocks. So I think there's going to be a recusal that's required in any event. But if maybe it would be helpful to explain what your role is going to be, and then explain the plan for like not participating in any official actions that would involve that company.
Yeah, sure. The role is to be one of the special assistants to the mayor, and I'll be working in the areas of homelessness, health, complex care, housing less so, actually, really more in the realm of addressing unsheltered homelessness and the related health needs that often lead to people being unsheltered for a long period of time. And so it's a lot of the work is really more at the systems level, really trying to connect you know, the providers of services with the entities that are serving people who are experiencing homelessness, and you know, kind of all the work that surrounds that. And so I don't anticipate being part of any awarding of contracts, or I'm just trying to think about it. It just doesn't seem to me that that's going to be part of my job to, you know, be part of deciding awards for contracts. And in absolutely any case, I would absolutely keep myself, you know, as far from that as possible if it related to Agnew Beck. Because I think all of that will still continue to occur through the departments, not through the mayor's office. I mean, I know the mayor's office does some small grants, but those wouldn't go to a business anyway. So yeah, the work that will be doing is really more at the policy level and at the more sort of systems level, and really more related to direct service providers, and not I don't think it will really be about awarding contracts or deciding contracts. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yes, it does. Thank you. And that's helpful to understand too, because I think with that caveat that, simplifies things a little bit, that, any official action where you could be involved in not only awarding a contract to your company, but awarding a contract to a competitor for the same type of work that your company does. Any of those issues, or, coming up with a plan where you're identifying the need for a contract that your company is likely to bid on. So the board could just draft up an opinion that basically says, with the caveat that you will be recused from any official acts that involve, those types of issues, and won't take any official actions in matters that involve your company. Then it would be really no issue. And there was a couple of questions in your request as well. One would be if it would affect your company's ability to receive contracts and bid on the type of contracts that it normally does. And I don't think that it would, provided that you were recused from any official actions. And I think the other point was about that stock buyback, that I think that your recusal is going to be required in any event. So I don't see that stock buyback really has any impact on the decision, whether you'd be recused or not.
I guess in my questioning, I more focused on, I understand the conflicts of interest. I'm more focused on the public perception and the, being, if you were in a position to suggest different contractors or companies for different projects, and then putting your company on the table for multiple contracts and then profiting off that after you buy the shares back. That is just, public perception is not great there. And that's kind of what I was thinking about, because obviously conflicts of interest would not allow you to participate in the decision making. And so I was just curious how you thought of it, and if there was anything you were willing to do there. But Paul's right that simply based on the code, there's really not any issues that I saw. I was just curious for public perception purposes how that would work.
This is,
Patrick, did you have something to say?
yeah, this is Patrick Teagarden. So here's the thought here is that if she's going to be recusing herself from those types of decisions, then why should she have to stop working or being part of the company? It would be, to me, this is kind of like we have some people on boards, for example. I think we had some geophysical scientists who were involved in the port and some other projects there while they were still, actively working in their company. And it makes sense that, as a community, as a municipality, we have to seek out people who are experts in the field, who are already working in the field, to be on boards and to provide, the management leadership with their expertise. And at the same time, they have a business or contracts. And I guess I guess the big thing is it possible, and this is the question for you, is it really possible though, in this type of work to have a division between the policies um, and the actual contracting for these types of work? For example, we have some types where there's actually material selections and things like this. Is it possible to consult to the city in such a way that it doesn't affect the way the contracts are formulated?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I can certainly see a situation where through the course of the work, if we decided, I'm just trying to think of a good example, that, the city needed so I guess maybe I'm just asking a clarifying question of you. Are you thinking of an example where, as part of some of the work I'm doing at the mayor's office that we say like, hey, we need a contractor to do some type of data analysis or something? Like by participating in that, I'm kind of creating an opportunity for the company. Is that what you're describing?
I guess I would go over and say if you believed, if your company was really well suited towards doing some type of specialized analysis or some type of work where your company definitely has an advantage over their local competition, and therefore the if the advice that's given is specifically given in such a manner that just because it's what your company does the best is the recommendation, then I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with that right there, and I don't know enough about your field to go over and to be able to say, oh yeah, there's no problem there. So I mean, I'll give an example. We had a recent one where I think there was a person who was an expert in some type of pipes. I think it was drainage pipes, I believe it was, and he was working to help develop a plan that included those types of materials. And in that case right there, I believe that there was a clear distinction that it wouldn't be using the type of materials that his company provides. You see what I'm saying? Specifically. And I just want to make sure that there is a path that you can be an effective part of the mayor's team and not bind your company from being able to conduct business.
Yeah, I mean, it is tricky because it's like the thing that you said at the beginning is true that, I mean, I guess the hard part is that my company is 35 people, so there's a lot of different work that people do. And my part of it is related to, it's how I gained the expertise that I'm bringing to the mayor's office. So my piece of it, what I'll be doing in the mayor's office is, it's related to the work that I do in the private sector. That said, there's a lot of other things that other people do that, I'm not as expert in, that I wouldn't be working in. Yeah, so I guess I'm just unclear how, just kind of with where you started your comment about, the municipality wants to bring in expertise. How do people manage those? Like with the folks who are talking about working at the port, how do people manage that?
That'd probably be a good question for Paul or somebody else there.
Yeah, that's a good point. How I was looking at it is like what Patrick was saying was a good point about the potential for conflicts too. But like if you're going to be doing the same type of work for the mayor's office that you did for your company, developing plans, doing data analysis and the issue of homelessness and finding solutions and stuff like that, that's not doesn't create a conflict. But where the issue would come up is not just in the awarding of contracts, but if, say, for example, in the mayor's office, you're coming up with a plan that, this is an area where we need to hire, some sort of outside consultant, or we need to create a study to do data analysis, and it's reasonably foreseeable, or it's at least somewhat foreseeable that your company could bid on those contracts or be awarded those contracts in the future. Even if you're not awarding the contract yourself, that's still part of the official action related to the benefit of the company. So it still would be an area where you'd have to recuse yourself if there's any potential that your official actions could benefit or harm the company. So I think with that caveat that the recusal would be broad enough to cover those situations that Patrick was mentioning, that would be something to consider as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, just as I think about the work, I mean, most of the work has to do, like, if there were contracting, it's really more around direct service providers. So people actually provide shelter, provide healthcare. Um, I mean, I certainly can imagine over the course of 3 years, there might be opportunities, like you just described, or situations like you described where I could be in a position of creating an opportunity or not, so understanding that I would need to recuse myself in those situations as well. Um, so I think that makes sense to me. And, is the Board of Ethics available, or how does it work at the municipality in terms of when there are specific situations that I'm kind of unclear about whether I need to recuse myself or not? Is there someone available that I can ask that question to, or how does that work sort of on a,
Yeah,
day-to-day
absolutely.
basis?
I was going to bring this up to the board later too, but myself and Joe Busa, the deputy municipal attorney, so both of us just got appointed as the ethics officers for the municipality. So we're available all the time to answer any specific questions, and we can let you know, whether it's something that's big enough that needs to come back to the board for, another advisory opinion potentially, or whether we can just answer the question and give you guidance on how to proceed for this specific situation.
Well, that's great. That's awesome. Thank you.
And this is Daniel Bellard. I suppose as we're kind of discussing the possibility of creating an opportunity for the company to benefit while acting in your official capacity without directly being involved with contracting. For me, the kind of natural question, without being intimately familiar with the role you'll be filling, is would recusal from those sort of policy discussions that could have the impact of creating an opportunity for the company to benefit, would that substantially impede your ability to complete what it is that that position is supposed to entail, or what you're supposed to be doing for the municipality there?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm just trying to think that through because I've been working under a contract with the Mental Health Trust, kind of on loan to the mayor's office over the last 6 weeks. So I've been participating in some of the work already. So I'm just trying to think about what I've been doing. And I mean, really, we're working as a team to understand the current situation and determine what needs to be done. And again, as we kind of think about the solutions that need to be implemented, it's really, some of it is process changes, some of it is, making recommendations around, I'm just trying to think about the financial part. around budget that needs to be allocated to departments to do the work, you know, in terms of shelter, healthcare coordination, all that type of thing. I mean,
Okay,
I
so-
guess what's kind of funny is I'm going in there, you know, like in my work at Agnubec, I would be paid to do a plan, but now as an internal person, I will be doing those plans. So, and those plans aren't so much about, I mean, the part that we usually get paid for is to do the plan. It's not to, the plans themselves don't create more contracts. You know what I mean? They're
Mhm.
usually around, you know, how municipal resources would be allocated in the community. So I'm going to be doing that work as an employee, not as a contractor.
So I guess just to put my question and how I take your answer a bit more succinctly, it would be fair to say then that recusing yourself from those sort of situations that could benefit the company down the road wouldn't impede your ability to do the municipality's work.
I mean, I don't think so. No. I mean, it's a little hard for me to say because I haven't done the job yet, but I don't think so. And I think it's helpful. This conversation is helpful, and also to know that there's a resource available so that I'm, you know, ensuring that I'm thinking broadly enough about recusal. Well, and also there's a team there, so I'm not the only person there. So I feel like there's opportunity too that I can pull myself out and, you know, when needed.
Well, I guess if there's no more questions for the requester, is the board ready then to start deliberating on what its response to the request would be?
I do believe so.
Yeah, I don't have any further questions.
I don't have any further
Patrick?
questions.
All right, no further questions from me. And so the question is to take the request for an advisory opinion 2024-02 for consideration. All those in favor of considering this request for an advisory opinion, say aye.
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 And all those opposed? And the motion carries. And I think I need a parliamentarian. So Paul, would this be a further motion to deliberate, or I guess procedurally, where do we go from here?
No, I don't think you need another motion. I mean, I think you're considering this matter already. So
Okay.
just whatever input any board member has or things that they want to be in the response to the advisory opinion. I'll state, unless somebody wants to volunteer to draft it, I would be happy to draft up this one as well, draft up the response. I guess I'm just wanting to hear kind of the thoughts or what should be in the opinion. I do think that the section should talk about recusals, just kind of explain what we discussed, that how it would be broader than, it's not just necessarily awarding a contract to the company. It's anything that could potentially, financially benefit the company or a competitor.
I certainly agree with that. And I think that, on the one hand, where a lot of our concern is about making sure that we can have a recusal that kind of avoids that conflict, but also, where we previously discussed what outside employment looks like and making sure that it doesn't impede the work of the municipality. I think that she's given us some good information there about what the role entails and sort of how her expertise and experience is what's coming into play there. That makes me comfortable that protecting from that conflict isn't also diminishing her ability to serve in that capacity.
Yeah, and Paul, I would, the recusal of something that may down the line cause a conflict is hard to see until you're potentially all the way down the road at a decision. And that's kind of why I brought up that first point of um when doing a buyback of the shares, potentially have a contract clause or something that you do not profit off of anything that came in while she was working for the mayor's office could potentially help that situation, because I just see situations where you could be in a conversation and coming up with ideas and you're just kind of, brainstorming, and it leads to a, down the road becomes a situation that the company um could benefit from. and where did the official action really take place is sometimes a gray line, other than like a formal vote. So I don't know. Patrick, what are your thoughts along those lines?
Well, for me, I'll be really frank. This is just the potential for this going wrong. Just seems to be very high. Um, but I don't think that the stock buyback or really is a factor there, because um, if there is for a future benefit, it's going to happen. What I'm kind of I mean, to put it in my world of aviation, it would be like if I were hired as a consultant to the city or as a advisor on how to make changes to Merrill Field to be better for the city, and my company that I own sold an airplane that needed a 5,000-foot runway, and I'm advising that you need to have a 5,000-foot runway for Merrill Field. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't help me now, it but but it helps my company be competitive in the future. And I guess that's the kind of thing that where I have the concern is that I don't know enough about this field to understand, but I guess that would be the thing I would be concerned with, is that in being an advisor, providing advice in such a way, the recusal needs to be not only for projects, but um, in establishing the framework for the future that gives an unfair advantage to one company over another. So I don't think that the stock sale and repurchase is really effective. It's just going to be a situation that there's going to have to be recusal when there's decisions being made that could give an unfair advantage to the future. And I don't know how to, you know,
I could
I
see that if she's, in the business of like owning and revamping properties for, like, but this is a situation where it's a consulting company. They get long-term contracts for consulting purposes, but not, it's not like an asset that, like, kind of your airplane example, or buying housing or low income housing, that kind of thing for homeless um situations. And so with a so I don't see a huge problem because it's a consulting firm. Rather than selling like physical goods. Um, I understand your concern. Um, I I guess I'm just not thinking of a specific example where that would happen with a consulting firm.
I just don't
Because
know enough about.
consulting firms are normally like issue by issue or topic by topic rather than um yeah, than a long term.
I don't know enough about the type of consulting being done and everything with the company. I guess I would just say that, like everything else, we rely on the person to recuse themselves when there's something that would seem to give their company an unfair advantage, and that's what we.
Yeah, and I think Paul, part of that section should be, advice for, hyper awareness of this issue and, as it's being discussed and tracking down the road, the second anything comes up that's questionable, just bring it up as a potential conflict there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I could definitely put that in. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that situation that we had with that request last year or the year before, but where the board kind of analyzed the potential for houses to be built for in Holton Hills, for example. Like,
Exactly.
years down the road, you might sell a house, you might benefit. Like that's all too really attenuated and too unpredictable to really predict that there's going to be a conflict of interest. But if it was a discussion where, like, the mayor's office or, they're talking about, hey, let's come up with a study to analyze this issue, or let's, uh, come up with a plan or something like that, or we can't do this work. Let's seek contractors to develop this plan that we need, and it's reasonably foreseeable that the company might benefit. I think that is a situation where there would be a conflict of interest if they're going to potentially create the need for work that might be fulfilled by the company in the future. So it is kind of a tough line to draw as far as how predictable or how foreseeable it is that the company would benefit. But there is, potentials for conflicts outside of just the awarding of contracts there. And then I kind of agreed with what Patrick said too. I think just the connection to the company is too strong, where even if there is a carve out in the stock buyback or there's provisions that are made, other partners in the company might benefit then through that awarding of contracts. And then, they potentially down the road, they could shift since the other partners are making more money, that might impact the ability of the requester then to share in some of those profits indirectly, if they're reaping a profit. So I just think the connection is too tight that it's not really gonna serve any purpose. There's still gonna be a recusal that's required in any event.
I agree.
So perhaps the the best what you were just saying there or a moment ago is that when there's discussions about future work to be done, that's probably a trigger that that needs to be considered for recusal as at least one component. The second somebody's talking about, well, maybe we need to get a consultant. So the second I would hear that, I think that might be the trigger to say I need to recuse myself from this discussion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess it depends how foreseeable it is that the company would be involved. Like if it's an area where the company doesn't normally bid on those types of projects, or it's very remote that they would actually get the contract. I mean, that's one thing, but if it's like right in the company's wheelhouse, they normally bid on those types of contracts and, would be very well suited to get the contract, then I think you're absolutely right. If there's discussions about we should potentially look at having a study or having somebody develop a plan that should trigger a recusal.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't have any further questions at this point. I don't, so.
Yeah, Paul, do you need anything else to draft a?
No, I don't think so. I think I've got the board's marching orders. I can go ahead and draft up the opinion, and then of course we'll review it at the next meeting to make sure that the board concurs with it, and then we can adjust it from there. But I think in the meantime, what Daniel, like what you did with the last request for an advisory opinion that we had, maybe we could just send out a quick email to the requester, letting her know, because the employment is supposed to start here soon, but just letting her know, yeah, we don't see any issues provided that there is recusals from any official actions that could benefit the company, as will be explained in your advisory opinion.
Mhm.
And then the board could approve it at the next meeting.
All right, and I think with that, is there a motion to not direct Paul to draft an opinion consistent with our discussion here this evening?
I
So
second
moved.
that. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were making the motion.
That's all right, you still got the second.
Okay.
No further discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And none opposed, the motion carries. And Paul, do we need a second motion for the sort of, I guess, interim email or?
No, I don't think so. I think that was part of the discussion. You can just go ahead and do that.
Okay. And with that, the next item on our agenda this evening is member comments. Have we any?
None from me.
None for me. Hey, Paul, if you got a moment, can I talk to you for a moment on the side before we get up?
Sure, absolutely. I did have one brief comment here. So the chair at the last meeting had asked a question about the notices to respond to public solicitation, on how those were being. There was a $15 fee that was charged to public servants that were filing those requests. And the clerk's office today, Carissa, and forwarded that up to Jamie, and then they did a great job kind of answering that question. That was just kind of a historical thing that was in there from when the notices used to be published in the papers. So they don't really need to charge that fee anymore. If the board is okay with, because the board approves those forms, what I was going to suggest is that we can just take that $15 fee off the form, and then they won't be charged with filing those in the future. Because as the chair mentioned, a lot of times there's not really a conflict there. They're just filing those to be safe. We want to encourage people to file disclosures as much as possible, so we shouldn't really charge for filing those. So we could take that fee off there. And then, like I was saying earlier, myself and Joe Busa got appointed as the municipal ethics officers. So the code actually says that those notices to respond to public solicitation can be approved by either the municipal ethics officer or the board. So what I was going to ask Carissa to do in the future is just send those notices to me, and then I'll sign off on them. Because sometimes, I think we had one last year where the guy wanted to participate in the foreclosure auction, but the boards wasn't meeting for like another month. So he didn't actually get the form reviewed and sent back to him in time that he could actually bid on the properties. So cases like that, where there's no issues, we could just go ahead, and me or Joe could just go ahead and sign off on them and then get them back to the people right away.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
I guess for notice purposes, this is something that we should have on as new business's next meeting as well.
I guess if you want to put it on new business review of the updated form, Carissa and I can type up exactly how that should appear on the agenda. But we would just have the board look at the new updated form. All it's going to do is take off that portion where they charge a $15 fee.
Okay, that sounds perfect to me.
Thank you both for tracking that down and looking into that.
And do we have any further member comments this evening? And hearing none, our next topic this evening is audience participation. I think we only have our requester from item 7 and no other members of the public in the meeting this evening.
I don't see any.
And our next meeting is scheduled for October 17th, 2024 from 7 o'clock p.m. to 8:30 p.m. And I believe the board would finally entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
And all those in favor say aye.
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 And none opposed. The motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:52 p.m. this evening.